This is Chapter 6. Give you sort of an intro to Chapter 6. Basically, it's on fraud, internal control, and cash, in some order like that. The basic question that most students have is why? Why do I have to learn this stuff? I'm in legal studies, I'm a business major, why do I have to learn this stuff? Well, basically, internal control is very important for financial self-defense. U.S. companies lose, and I don't know where I get this number, but it says about $1 trillion, which is 7% of their total revenues, to employee fraud each year. So employees are stealing office supplies, they're stealing inventory, they're stealing equipment, and most of all cash. And so as someone who is in a business program, you're either going to be running your own business, or you're going to be working for a business where you're going to be responsible for the company's assets in some format. And so you need to know about this stuff. So you've got cash is especially susceptible. It can be stolen, before it's been recorded. It can be, or after it's recorded. It can be falsely disbursed by false invoices. All kinds of things like that. And if you don't know about them, it could hurt you personally, financially, if you're running a business, or you could end up losing a job because of losing track of company assets. Okay, so financial self-defense, that's one reason why. The second reason why is Sarbanes-Oxley. This is the legislation passed in 2002 to try to reduce the amount of corporate fraudulent reporting that was going on. And if you're working for a publicly traded, that's on the major stock exchanges, company, you're required to have an adequate system of internal controls, and there's a whole lot of stipulations that go along with that. So Sarbanes-Oxley applies if you're working at a publicly traded corporation, but it makes sense if you're working anywhere, because the principles of internal control that they are advocating will save you money as a business and make you much more efficient and effective. Okay, so let's see. The other reason that you might want to learn this stuff is it will be on the test. Okay, so that's another thing. So, let's see. Oh, the next thing is how. How are you going to learn internal control procedures? The best thing about, the best way to do this is to take it personally. And this is true of anything in accounting. If you take it personally, you're more likely to learn it better. So think about your own personal assets, the things that have value. Do you leave your apartment or car or house unlocked? Do you leave sort of cash on your kitchen table all the time that anybody could just grab? Do you give your ATM passwords out, all the time? No, well, you have a certain amount of personal internal control that you're using, financial internal control. And so as you're going through the principles that you get into in this chapter, think about how they might apply to you personally, okay? And then chances are you have worked at some point, maybe, and so think about some place you've worked, whether it's, in retail or, in some other capacity. Think about the place you work and evaluate their internal controls according to these principles. And so the how is take it personally and apply these things as you go along. Have them make sense to you. Okay, so now we'll get to the what in a minute. Oh, the other thing is, if you seriously want to learn internal control for a business that you're actually running or you might run in the future, in the optional extras section of this chapter is the Securities and Exchange Commission Guide for Small Business on how to set up a real internal control system. So you get a lot of resources to work with. Okay, so part of what we need to understand here is it's sort of intro and fraud. Well, what is fraud? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's fraud. Fraud applies to an employer-employee situation. So it's between an employer and an employee, and it's a dishonest act by an employee at the cost of the employer. Okay, it's work-related. You're stealing from your employer. End of story. This is as opposed to the shoplifter that comes in and just, starts, walking out with stuff. That's not employer-employee. So when we're talking about fraud, that's what we're talking about. One way to conceptualize it is using the fraud triangle, which has 3 parts to it, as you can see, since it is a triangle. You've got financial pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. So let me talk a little bit about each of those and see if this helps you understand. So if you've got an employee who's got a lot of financial pressure, what does that mean? Well, it means they could have too much debt for the amount of income they're earning. They could want a more affluent lifestyle than their current paycheck covers. They could have just had, another kid, or maybe they've got, various financial pressures that would make them feel that they really needed more money or more resources. So that's kind of the financial pressure end of it. Rationalization is a little trickier, but I'm sure that you've worked in places, or maybe you've heard people say this. It's like, I'm so underpaid for the amount of work I do that I can just take these reams of paper home with me. Or the bosses have so many perks that I don't get. Maybe I'll just pad my expense account a little bit here. They all do it. And so there's all kinds of ways to rationalize. Oh, I'll pay this back if employees are stealing money. That is such a common one. I'll pay it back once this situation is over. So there's all kinds of ways to rationalize why it's okay to, or okay, I should say, to commit fraud against your employer. Okay, the third one is opportunity. So opportunity, basically what it comes down to is this. Employees can all have all the financial pressure they want. They can rationalize all they want, but if they don't have the opportunity, then the chances they can commit a fraud are severely minimized. If they've got the opportunity, then chances are the fraud will occur. So this is where, as a business person or as an employee in charge of company assets, this is where you come in. And this is why you need to learn the principles of internal control, is to reduce the opportunity for employees that might have financial pressure and lots of rationalizations to be able to make off with the company assets. So employees who want to commit fraud, they can, come up with all the reasons for it and rationalizations, but if they don't have the opportunity, it makes it a little bit harder. Okay, so I think that's about all I want to say about this part of it. The next thing we'll move on to are the actual internal controls that we've been raving so much about.